Hey guys, it's John from Silent Sky Studios again, and today we're going to be talking about recording bands in the studio and whether to record each instrument together or separately. And what we're talking about here is there are two primary approaches to recording bands. You can record each instrument separately, completely by itself in isolation, or you can basically record, all the members of the band together at one time. And so we're going to be talking about some of the pros and cons of each way of working here. So first off, we'll talk about recording each instrument separately. The way that this works is I like to think of this almost as like a brick wall. It's like you lay down one layer of bricks, and then you put the next layer of bricks on top of it, and then the next layer of bricks on top of it, and so on and so forth until you have a complete wall. And in this case, you would most likely start out by recording your drum tracks, since all the other instruments pretty well have to follow the drums to keep in time. You would set up, mic up the drum kit, probably give the drummer a headphone mix with maybe a click track, and you might have, a guitar player maybe who's sitting in the control room and plugging his guitar in direct. So that the drummer could maybe hear like a rough, guitar part in the headphones in order to, help him with the feel of the song or whatever. But you would lay down the drum tracks, and after the drum tracks are completed, then you would probably record, the bass guitar. The bass guitar would just be playing along with the pre-recorded drum tracks at that point. And then you would layer, probably after the bass guitar, you probably do the rhythm guitars. If you had keyboards, you could do the keyboards after the rhythm guitars, and then, ultimately, do your, of course, you do your guitar solos, and then ultimately you would finish up by doing your vocals. The biggest positive aspect of working in this way is that you get perfect isolation, you get perfect separation between tracks. The negative aspects, probably the biggest one is that, sometimes, obviously, members of a band are accustomed to playing and performing together, and whenever you isolate each player, sometimes it just feels different. It sounds different to the musician, to the player, while they're recording their parts. And so sometimes you may sacrifice some of the feel, some of the vibe of the song. And it may just come across as sounding a little bit sterile or a little bit unnatural. The other primary approach to recording bands is to record the band almost as if you were recording a live album. Set up all the players in the room together, let them basically all play together as a band, and basically cut all of the tracks together at the same time. Oftentimes you get a better vibe, you get more of a live feel of the song. The band sounds more natural because that's the way they're accustomed to playing. They're accustomed to performing and playing together, and you kind of have that interplay between instruments, between the bass and the drums, kind of get that rhythmic interplay that sometimes may be a little harder to achieve whenever you're recording everything separately. So you get more of a live feel, you get a better vibe. Also, this generally takes less time, obviously, because if you're able to, record pretty much everything at once, that's going to take a lot less time than if you have to do all the drums by themselves, do all the bass guitar parts by themselves, the guitar parts by themselves. That can be a lengthy process in terms of time. And if you're paying the studio by the hour, then obviously it's going to save you money as the customer if you can cut everything at once. In terms of the cons of working this way, Obviously, you're going to get some bleed between tracks because you're setting up the instruments in the same physical space, so you may very well get some of the guitar bleeding into the drum mics. You may get some of the drums bleeding into the guitar and bass mics. So that's, whenever you're mixing down, sometimes in extreme cases that could cause some issues for you. But there is a way to kind of minimize that bleed. First off, you can minimize it by simply separating the instruments physically from each other as much as what's possible. You can set, the drums up on the complete opposite side of the room than what you would the guitar amps and the bass amp. So just that physical separation will help to minimize some of the bleed because of the sound, the audio. The sound will obviously be more faint. The greater the distance between the instruments and the mics. And you can also use, and I commonly do this, you can also use a baffle, which is basically like a portable acoustic panel that lets you create a barrier between the instruments. And I'll typically put baffles around the guitar and bass amps, which helps to minimize the amount of the guitar and bass sound in the room so that there's less of that bleed into the drum mics. And it also helps to minimize the amount of bleed of the drums into the guitar and bass mics. Another negative aspect of recording everything at once is if someone keeps, if one of the players in particular, really has it keeps blowing their part, keeps messing up at a certain part of the song that kind of throws off all the other players. Obviously small mistakes are fine. You can fix that with overdubs. But if somebody has a real train wreck during the song, then it may be that you just have to do a complete other take. Another way of working is what I would call the hybrid approach. And what this amounts to is recording the basic rhythm tracks together at one time, and then just going back and fixing any mistakes, doing any layering or any overdubs, then doing guitar solos, and then doing vocals. Just to elaborate a little bit, when cutting your basic rhythm tracks, this would be your drums, your rhythm guitars, and your bass. And that would probably be about it. Maybe keyboards if the band had a keyboard player. But what this allows you to do is you kind of get the more of the feel, more of the live feel, more of the live vibe. You kind of get that from the players performing together whenever they're cutting the basic tracks. And so, not only do you get the benefit of the live feel, the live vibe, but you also, of course, in the interest of time, you're able to finish each song more quickly, because if you get usable takes on the drums and the bass and the guitar, then you're knocking out more work in a shorter period of time. And so that's going to make the session more affordable, obviously, for the customer. So basically, you record the basic tracks together, drums, bass, rhythm guitar. Then you'd go back and you'd fix any minor mistakes. If a guitar player hits a bad note on a certain part, you would go back and just simply punch in and punch out on any of those parts and make correct any of those mistakes. Then you would go back after fixing mistakes. You would go back and you would overdub if there are any layered guitar parts, or if you're going to double track any of the guitar parts where they're basically just recording the same part again to give it a thicker sound. And then you would do your guitar solos. Obviously, I normally ask the guitar players not to play any solos when you're cutting those basic rhythm tracks, because first off, most of the time the guitar solos are not really set in stone anyway. So most likely the guitar player might not like what he played for the solo when tracking it all together anyhow. And also the guitar solos, would have a tendency to, since the guitar solo may ultimately be played different in the end than what they played on that take, you might have some issues with bleed. You know, you might be able to hear the solo. You might be able to hear some of the bleed of that into the drum mics, for example, and it would be more obvious than like the rhythm guitar parts, because those solos may end up being so different. And then after the guitar solos are complete, then you would finally record the vocals. You know, record the lead vocal, record any vocal layering, record any background vocals, and then you're pretty much finished with the song at that point in terms of the tracking. There are obviously some pros and cons of each of these ways of working, but regardless of which way you choose, with some care, you can achieve great results either way. And many hit albums have been recorded using all of these different approaches. So hopefully after watching this video, you'll be a little more informed about the different approaches that you can take to recording your band, and hopefully you'll be better equipped to make that decision the next time you go into the studio for your next session. As always, I like to direct folks to the website. It's www.silentsky.net. That's silentsky.net. Got lots of articles and some other videos that you may find helpful. And also that through the website you can get in touch with me if you have any questions or have any feedback about any of these videos, or if you'd like to schedule a session with us, then we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, thanks for watching.